Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on what time you're watching this. My name's Connor from 905 Review. You guys are checking out our series Give This a Spin, where I recommend you some of my favorite albums. Today we're checking out the all-time classic that is Led Zeppelin's self-titled debut. While Led Zeppelin would retire as one of the most significant rock groups in history, their roots actually go back to another famous group. The Yardbirds were an early 60s rock group who had Eric Clapton on guitar, replaced him with Jeff Beck, and then replaced him with Jimmy Page, all three of them being considered among the greatest guitarists ever. By 1968, the group split due to creative differences. However, Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck, they were enticed by the idea of creating a supergroup. Now, this never materialized. However, they did record the one song Beck's Bolero together, which also featured Keith Moon from The Who on drums, while John Paul Jones was also present. So Jimmy Page elected to play the last remaining couple shows of the Yardbirds' scheduled tour after the other members dropped out. He would recruit Robert Plant to join him on vocals, who suggested adding in John Bonham on drums, and once John Paul Jones was back in the mix, Led Zeppelin was born. Well, not exactly. First they tried to go by the New Yardbirds, but a cease and desist by the old band put an end to that. And thinking back to how members of The Who suggested that a supergroup fronted by Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck would sink like a lead balloon, this new band had their name, only they changed the more juvenile balloon for the more hardcore Zeppelin, while also dropping the A in lead so not to be mistaken as Led Zeppelin. And what artwork would be more fitting for a sinking Zeppelin than the Hindenburg disaster, which was also sure to grab people's eyes. But Led Zeppelin was more keen on grabbing your attention with their music, which they would do from the opening notes of the first track, Good Times, Bad Times. This intro is a great way to build anticipation, and I thought it was actually very well used in the trailer for the film American Hustle. And after the song picks up, we get into this pretty sweet groove, where Plant sings about the everyday troubles that bother him, and how he's growing apathetic to them. Things don't sound all bad though, given Page's solos in the song, which is where things really kick into the next gear. And that's also where things are on the way up, because these are the good times in question. We slow things down for a more tender second track where, just as quickly as the good times came, they went, because next is Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. And that's just it. It's the distraught decision of leaving someone you really care for. The acoustic guitar delivers this emotion well, as do the more aggressive chord strums, which are as if to represent the woman's shock or fear upon hearing this. Plant is also exceptional throughout this, singing passionately and later more intensely, prompting the band to jam out, which they will jump in and out of. Following this is the much looser You Shook Me. It creates what I would describe as a drunken sound with its long, drawn-out guitar notes and simple yet punching bass drum. However, with this in mind, I do picture more of a seedy looking bar with everybody's face down in their hands or in their drinks, more than I do shaking things all night long. But even still, this is an all-time favorite of mine. So to close a pretty damn solid album side, we have Dazed and Confused, where a deep bass and an echoing guitar really set the mood. Like much of the old blues Zeppelin was influenced by, the narrator's been done wrong by his woman here, though the song sounds a lot more psychedelic than one 10 years prior would have. Partway through, things get even more unconventional as the band really experiments and creates this atmosphere to the song before going into an all-out jam, after which they reel it back into its original sound. It is definitely one of the band's most impressive tunes. Opening the second side of this album with some bright keys is Your Time Is Gonna Come. While it brings a much cheerier sound than Dazed and Confused had, thematically it follows a pretty similar course where Plant's been wronged by this woman, but things aren't all bad in his eyes because he knows that karma's gonna catch up with her. Transitioning right out of this is the acoustic instrumental Black Mountainside. It stays in the same general lighthearted mood as the previous track, minus the keyboard where the scene is instead helped by some percussion. While I don't dislike this song, I feel it pales in comparison to the absolute greatness that is the rest of the album. Quickly changing tones into something electric and energetic, we have Communication Breakdown. And that energy is the passion that Plant feels towards this one specific gal. And these feelings are almost too overwhelming to the point he can't, like me right now, can't spit out the words that he wants to, hence the communication breakdown. I would think it's probably one of the band's best known songs. It's got a lot of the makings of a good single, being upbeat and relatively short, at least compared to the rest of the band's stuff, being only 2.5 minutes, the shortest on here outside of Black Mountainside. But we follow that with something quite the opposite, being the ever loungy I Can't Quit You Baby, where Page's frequent improvisation is the only thing remotely quick. So I'm gonna put you down for a while. And I really love this one. Like, between the bass and the drums, it feels pretty jazzy, doesn't it? And even when the band steps it up and makes it more intense, they don't overdo it so as to not step out of bounds here. Made me mistreat my only child. Going out with a bang, we have the album's longest track, How Many More Times. It stays in somewhat of a jazz-like mood with its bass line and the drums being led by the hi-hat. However, in this case, Page's guitar work is more comparable to the psychedelia heard on Dazed and Confused. However, this is before the band really gets grooving, where they all go into a more traditional rock sound. And Plant's been nothing but good to this girl he's seeing, so he's left here wondering, when's she gonna start treating him the same? And pretty early on in the song, we venture out into psychedelic land again, alternating between experimenting and jamming out. This eventually all comes to a halt at the song's bridge, where we get back into the more typical rocking. With Led Zeppelin being such a historic album, it's seen plenty of different release variations throughout the years, but nothing really significant before the 21st century. The only real things of note is the album would either come with orange text or turquoise text on it. In 1976, the Taiwanese version had the colors inverted, and in 1991, the Soviet Union version was in full color. Following this, we had a series of apparently unofficial Spanish releases of the album in 2010 and 11 on a variety of different color vinyls. Around the same time, there was a blue British one out, as well as a green European one. 2014 was a big year for the album, seeing a box set made. The super deluxe edition of this, limited to 30,000 copies, had the album on both CD and vinyl, and the same for a 1969 live show the band played in Paris. While the live concert was pretty good, I would say One knock on it is I feel you really have to be in the mood to hear it, so I would only really recommend it to people who are already Zeppelin fans, as you're only going to hear even more experimentation and songs being built to bigger lengths. I mean, some of the songs even double in duration in the concert setting. But opening with Good Times, Bad Times was cool, especially because very early on they just transition it right into Communication Breakdown. They also played Heartbreaker from their sophomore album, which it had so much energy and edge to it in this show. You Shook Me was played out to be much longer, stretching out to 12 minutes at this time, but they made it so much raunchier in the process too. And then also from Led Zeppelin 2, they played Moby Dick, which, if you already know, it's just going to be an 8-minute drum solo. So if that sounds up your alley, check it out. If not, I'm not surprised. But if you didn't want the full box set, you could just get the album and the concert on a 2 CD or 2 vinyl set. Or even you could get it as a digital download, which featured alternate artwork similar to that old Taiwanese release. The cool covers didn't stop there, as the 2017 German release of the album featured a chromatic cover available on a blue or red vinyl. So Led Zeppelin would go down as one of the most notable rock bands in history. They certainly had the talent, they had the commercial appeal, and they were helping bring something new, as they probably wouldn't be considered so by today's standards, but they're actually considered one of the founders of metal. It generally seems like it's a toss-up for people for what the best Zeppelin album is, whether it's this one or their fourth one. They're both incredible. They both changed the game in their own ways. But regardless, it's hard to find a bad review of Led Zeppelin 1, as it's considered one of the greatest albums ever made. Now, I must say, Zeppelin has gotten more flack as time's gone on for their covers or reworkings of old songs, which, given their influence in American blues, a lot of times would be by black artists who would go uncredited. I mean, goddamn, there's even a Wikipedia list of Led Zeppelin songs that, were inspired by other songs, with 2/3 of this album being on there. And when you're as massive as Led Zeppelin, it's hard not to be overrated, as lots of people see them to be, but for as long as I can remember, I've been a huge fan personally. I think all the members are wickedly talented. They all have plenty of opportunities to shine on here. There's a great sense of chemistry that they have together with the fantastic songs they build on here, with this album being the start of it all for them. While they don't explore many subjects lyrically on here, it's almost exclusively singing about women. That doesn't bother me too much, as relationships are one of the most common things to write about. But at the same time, I wouldn't at all blame someone for being bothered by that. I think Led Zeppelin is an incredibly consistent listen, and so I'll be stamping it with an A grading. And honestly, while I was listening through, I had it in my mind that it could have even been an A+, but Black Mountainside, which again isn't even a bad song, it just never captivated me, and really that's what took it out of the running in my eyes. Speaking on the live album, as I said, it's probably going to be harder to get into with how much experimenting they do, really just working on creating atmosphere, less typical songs in that sense for a lot of it. So I would give that a B+, but it is worth noting some of the live versions of these songs are absolutely killer. But those are just my thoughts on this legendary album and its live counterpart. Let me know yours. Feel free to let me know any other thoughts you have that you want to share, and I appreciate you tuning in. You take it easy. But real quick before we take off, what were your thoughts on Led Zeppelin's debut? Did I rate it too high? Did I rate it too low? You let me know down below. I'm too exhausted to say anything more, so I appreciate you for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.